They say that stupid should hurt, and this time it does, times 2. Hi everyone, welcome to today's lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I am your host, John Correa. Today we have 2 morons misusing guns, and it's gonna hurt.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
Number 1, you see this lady with a gun in her hand. She's gonna load it with her finger on the trigger, put it up to her temple, and the gun goes off, and you can see the burn marks on her forehead. Thankfully, it did not actually shoot her in the head. She had it just next to her head. And so she didn't end up with a bullet hole in her head, instead with one in the ceiling and one probably through the roof. The next one we have some audio on. Let's listen in.
I looked at my shot, said, hold on, let me see my shit.
Inside that motherfucker with dust his head. I just shot myself. I swear to God.
I don't know what happened to either one of these doofuses, but they did give us some lessons. I think lessons like this are important to reiterate the rules of safe firearms handling and to be a good, sane, sober, moral, prudent person. How about you? Do you agree? All right, rule number 1, don't play with guns. And we don't use guns for cred on social media to show people how cool we are and stuff like that. Number 2, again, if you're gonna load a firearm, you make sure that your finger is high and in home base. Your finger should only be at work when you have made the decision to fire and your sights are on the target, something that you know you need to shoot, not when you are loading a gun. And now I know that a firearm, your finger kind of tends to rest on the trigger. You have to train it to be at home instead of at work. And that's rule number 2 of safe firearms handling. Always keep your finger high and at home until you're ready to go to work. Next thing, she goofs off here and keeps her finger on the trigger because that's cool, right? And that gun goes off and goes right through her hair. And she is literally a hair's breadth from having a traumatic brain injury or being dead. They say that stupid should hurt, right? Now, we always keep firearms as well, the rule number 3, unloaded until they're actually in use. This gun's not in use. She's just showing off with it. It's not being used to defend her person. She's not target shooting. She's not practicing. This gun should never have been loaded. The only thing she did right here, thankfully, is it was pointed in a direction that no human was harmed, which is the only redeeming factor here. I will note that there's a child in this room as well. That was very dangerous to that child, because where's that gun now? That gun has fallen off and is now loaded somewhere and pointed, well, it's not pointed because it's not being held, but in danger to that child. This is negligence of the highest order. And again, pointing that gun up through the ceiling, it's gonna go through that sheetrock, probably through the roof as well, and the, whatever kind of roofing compound there is, or it certainly could launch off into the stratosphere and be a danger to somebody. This is highly reckless. So we always keep firearms pointed in the direction of least consequence. Always keep our finger, high and in home base until we made a decision to fire. Now this guy's trying to take this gun apart. You notice this is a Glock pistol, and I'm not picking on Glocks, but he's trying to take this gun apart. So he pulls it back a little bit. Notice here that he points that gun firmly at his hand. I see this all the time with people that are carelessly taking Glock pistols apart. Taking a Glock apart, involves a particular way of removing the locking block and getting it out of the way. I don't think it's a great design. But whatever, you can do it without pointing the gun at your hand, everyone. So you have to do that. And you start by clearing the firearm first, because instead what he's gonna do here is, with the gun being loaded, he is going to then pull this down to try to take the slide off. So you see him pulling the slide back a little bit, pinching down on those, this sprung lever in order to take the gun apart. But that is not the way that you take a Glock apart. The first thing that you do is you drop the magazine, you clear the chamber, and you verify that that chamber is cleared before you do this particular piece with a Glock pistol. Now, he hasn't done that and hasn't verified that it's clear. Probably just dropped the magazine and then he's still got a round in the chamber. So he gets that down and then purposefully presses the trigger, because you have to press the trigger on a Glock pistol to take the gun apart. You must, as part of the takedown procedure, take the gun apart. To press the trigger to take the gun apart, and he has done the stupid thing of pointing it at himself while he is doing that. But he pointed at his hand earlier, so we know that he disregards all 3 rules of safe firearms handling. He pointed the gun in a place of high consequence. Number 2, he put his finger on the trigger without verifying that the gun was clear and without any purpose for doing so, and other than he's taking the gun apart. Number 3, the gun was loaded when it should have been unloaded. He violated all 3 at once. Therefore, he gets a bullet wound for his trouble. So particularly if you are a Glock shooter, and again, a Glock is a fine pistol. I'm not, bagging on Glocks. Make sure, number one, you drop the magazine and clear the chamber and verify that clear with not only visual means, but also tactile means. So you're putting your finger in the chamber, putting your finger in the magazine well, making sure that that gun is completely unloaded, then keep it pointed in the direction of least consequence all the time. I think it's a mistake for the Glock pistol to need to be have the trigger depressed in order to take it apart. I think it's a design flaw. It is a design flaw that has perpetuated for 5 generations of Glocks, so I'm going to guess that they're going to continue it. So you got to be doubly extra careful with that particular firearms design, so that because you're doing something that I don't think you ought to do. But while you do that, you make sure that gun is unloaded, you make sure that it is pointed in the direction of least consequence, so that when you press the trigger, it does not put a bullet wound in you. Both of these dummies teach us a couple of lessons. Let's not be like them and be better with firearms.